I'm so glad that you're all here. I think it's valuable for us to hear other people's stories, and we learn a lot just from listening, really listening to other people's stories. And I don't want to take a lot of time introducing because I want you to have as much time as possible to hear these speakers. So we are going to start with Amir. He will be sharing his story from Bosnia. And then Ariana on his left, she was one of my star pupils this last fall at DMAC, and she's from Mexico. And then we have Helen and Henry, and some of you may recognize them because Helen is our wonderful pupusa maker. So they are here from El Salvador. So each of them will take about 10 minutes to share their story, and then we should have another half hour for questions afterwards. And Jim, raise your hand, Jim. That is our timekeeper, so that we will kind of, sort of stay on schedule. All right, thank you.
All right, is this turned on, or am I? Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Amir. First and foremost, I want to say thank you as a Muslim for welcoming me to your place of worship here. It's beautiful, of course, as any place of God's worship, so thank you very much. So my name's Amir, and I'm a first-generation American, so I may give a little bit of a different perspective from my co-guests here. My parents came from Srebrenica, Bosnia, in 1997, and if you know anything about the history of Bosnia during the 90s, completely overcome by war, and specifically genocide as well. So my parents and my family were coming over here to essentially find asylum and to escape the war and treacherous life that was over there. As you know, maybe that there is a great Bosnian population here in Iowa and Des Moines. It's kind of interesting because on the, I guess, latitude line, Bosnia and Iowa are actually very similar in location, similar weather. There's a lot more hills in Bosnia, of course, than here, which is to say not good compared to Iowa, so it's good being here. But essentially, they came over here. I unfortunately lost 3 of my uncles to the war over there, as with many other Bosnian families who escaped here. And so, you know, Des Moines has been my place where I've grown up, I've gone to school, where I've lived. But even then, I felt a little bit different compared to the rest of my classmates and everyone who I grew up with, my friends. I guess mainly because of religion, but also because of culture too. Being Bosnian, speaking Bosnian, you know, it's a nice addition to who I think of as myself. And I remember, actually, I'll give a story. It was my first day of kindergarten, and my parents, because of language barriers, they misunderstood the start time of class. And so I missed the bus, unfortunately. I was waiting with my grandma, and I started crying because I couldn't see the bus anywhere. And it's my first day of school, where's the bus? And thankfully, actually, a older elderly couple drove by and saw us standing there just waiting. And they actually offered to take us to class. My grandma can't speak English still to this day. I barely could speak English at the time, too. Actually, I had to go through ESL programs learning. But we somehow managed to get through that barrier and speak with them, and they fortunately got me to the class. And I've always drawn back to that moment because it just shows how deeply compassionate and caring people from Iowa were to my family and the other family, Bosnian family members here. And I'll always be grateful for that compassion. But specifically throughout, you know, my life here, my mom has been working at a vending company, basically counting the coins and change out of vending machines for basically 16 years now. And she's completely satisfied with doing that for the rest of her life. And it just shows you the kind of work ethic that has been brought by their culture and what they do. My dad owns a mechanic shop in Des Moines, and I love going down there every time and just seeing, you know, how he has made an impact on the local businesses around the Des Moines community and just being there and participating in that societal culture. Of course, with religious aspects, you know, There's a few mosques centered around Des Moines that I regularly try to go with, try to participate, activate, and be active in my faith. And you can see, I guess, the culture there. It's, I guess kind of our religious life is really central to how we engage with each other as a community. Also how we kind of bring about our awareness of our issues throughout the community as well. So I guess I'll kind of transition over to, I guess, my life now and my story now. So I'm 19 years old, and I go to Simpson currently, I'm a sophomore there. And so studying political science and history. And it's been a great time so far, learning a lot. Hopefully we'll have a good, decent job. We were talking with Ryan earlier about, having a political science degree, what to do with it, but hopefully it will be a good time afterwards. But definitely, the issue of immigration, definitely in political science classes, always is a central, not only just moral issue, but a policy issue as well. And so I had a class on American public policy last semester, and we were actively discussing immigration, the issue with the DACA recipients, and just immigration as a whole. And a classmate of mine is actually a DACA recipient throughout that. And so it was incredibly interesting just to be from that perspective of her just sharing her ideas and sharing what that means. It just brings it down to a personal level when we discuss these types of issues. And so when we discuss it, I always try to keep my mind open to what exactly she and others are experiencing right now and have experienced throughout their whole life. For me, I can definitely say it's probably a lot easier. Growing up here, I obviously had certain different issues, throughout class. My parents, although they can speak English now, it took them a little while to do it. So just often translating and being the one who has to make certain decisions for the family because they don't know how to do it themselves. And so it's hard when you haven't experienced something in that sense. It's hard to come to that realization that people are suffering and are experiencing situations that are very difficult. And especially now, I'll kind of transition back. So when my parents came here, when other Bosnians came here, the environment was very, very welcoming and accepting. And that's one thing that I look forward to now when I look at the current situation. It's a lot different with the political climate of acceptance to DACA and immigrants who came here not legally. But I just always look back to the moral issue of why these people came here, and then I connect it back to why my parents came here. And it kind of puts you at that position of what exactly we as other individuals who aren't experiencing that, what we need to do. We have to share our voices and be active in helping them transition and to get those policy objectives continued through and bettered on. So I guess understanding that it's important just to be there for individuals who don't have the luxury that some of us here do, obviously. But I guess also it's important for us to be active in the community as well. And one thing that interests me through political science and just political engagement, as a 19-year-old, our millennial generation's not that active in the political cycle. And they definitely should be, because the issues are always going to be important to us. And looking through not only just DACA and immigration, but if the younger voices are being heard, then that says something about the rest of the America, the rest of our society. If we want our voices to be heard, we have to speak out and say something. And so whatever it means by active volunteering, political involvement, or just community involvement. I'm a part of the Bosniak American Association of Iowa, which was recently started to basically help Bosnian members within Des Moines and the community in Iowa to better their lives and to get specifically policy objectives that help us as a community out. And so I think as we move forward, it's important for organizations such as the one I'm a part of, just because we support Bosnian individuals and try to help out, doesn't mean that we can't support other members who aren't in that community. And from an immigration standpoint, we've experienced a lot of what many DACA recipients have experienced now. And so it's important for us to just pay attention to that and listen to those stories. My friend, who is a DACA recipient, actually went on local television, WHO, and shared her story. And I mean, that just takes a lot of courage just to be out and say something. And so for her to do that is just, it just tells me, what am I doing if she's able to do that and face criticism and to actively stand out in the community? Why shouldn't I do something? And it's just an important reminder for us all that just because we don't experience something doesn't mean that it won't affect us, and it should affect us. Because okay, thank you so much.
All right. Okay. Can you hear me okay? Is that okay? All right. Well, my name is Ariana, and first of all, I want to begin by thanking everyone who is here. I know it's probably a lot easier to stay at home and watch Netflix and cuddle in, so thank you in advance. My story begins before I even have memory of it really beginning. I was born in Mexico. My dad was a lawyer, and we were pretty well off. Everything seemed like nothing could go wrong, everything was fine, and then the war on drugs happened here in the US, and everything in Mexico kind of was a domino effect after that. So then violence became a huge issue because all these drug cartels began to overpower the government. And basically the government had no control over anything, and it was the cartels running the show. It wasn't very long before my dad started receiving death threats. He's a lawyer, he's dealing with these criminals, and they don't like the fact that he's putting them into jail. So he gets 2 attempts on him, and eventually him and my mom say, you know what, we're not waiting for the 3rd time. And so they try to come to the US legally and find out that it takes approximately 14 years, depending on your connections, and that's not even including the money and the uncertainty. I mean, you're not guaranteed that you will come in. So we go and we realize, okay, let's try to get a tourist visa and then just overstay the visa or try to stay until things simmer down in Mexico. And so that's what we do, and actually my dad says I'm the reason that we got it because I'm a little 3-year-old girl, and the lady asked me, little girl, why do you want to go to the United States? And I'm like, well, I want to go to Disneyland. And so just won her heart over. And so we came here, and we didn't think to stay for a very long time. My dad loved being a lawyer in Mexico, and I don't think anybody would do all those years of college and just to come to another country and work in the worst jobs nobody wants to work in. And so I don't remember anything from Mexico. I was 3 years old. The only thing that I remember is the United States. This is my home. And I didn't even know that I wasn't documented until I started growing up. I have an older brother who's 5 years older than me, and once he got to high school, he sees all his friends have driver's licenses. He tells my dad, hey, I want to have a driver's license. Why do all my friends have one and I don't? And my dad's like, well, because you're not documented. You don't have a social security card. You can't get a bank account. You can't drive. You think of every possible thing that you use your social security number for. People who aren't documented can't do any of that, or even just a state ID. Nothing. And my brother tries to go to college, and then that becomes another obstacle because we don't qualify for any federal financial aid, no student loans, no grants, nothing. So you pay out of pocket or you get private scholarships, and even private scholarships are really hard to get because I've lost count of the amount of times I've tried to apply for a scholarship, and the first requirement is must be a US citizen or resident. even if I exceed their GPA expectations, even if I exceed their volunteer expectations, that simple fact that I do not have a piece of paper, overpowers everything else. And my brother was very fortunate that he actually got a private scholarship that covered his full tuition to college and got a major in computer programming and has worked ever since. He married his college sweetheart. He has a house. He has a baby. My little baby nephew is 5 months old, and he's living the American dream. When my aunt came recently from Mexico to visit us, she looked at my brother and I and said, you two are the example of coming from nothing and then becoming something. And then someone else said something that's very true too. None of it would have been possible without my parents. I can't even begin to imagine leaving a country that you call home, leaving your family, leaving your career like my dad did, and then coming and having to start all over again. Being treated horribly. My dad, there's so many times when he comes home from work and he gets treated just horribly, and it just breaks my heart because I can't do anything to help him. He works for a cleaning company, and people just sometimes, they spill things on purpose, and it's just awful. One time he went to a gas station, and he's diabetic, so he got some snacks for his shift because he works during the night, and he got an energy drink. And then he goes up to pay, and the guy tried to overcharge him. His total was supposed to be like $5, and he tried to charge him like $16. And so my dad stands up for himself and says, no, do the math, it's not supposed to be $16. And the guy tells him, well, for you it is. And my dad's like, well, fine, then if you're gonna overcharge me, then I don't want it, just cancel the order, I don't want it. And the guy tells him, no, well, now you've contaminated my product, now you have to pay for it, or I'm calling the cops on you. And so my dad's just like, okay, you know what, he's leaving, and then I'm not gonna say the word that he called him because we're in God's home, but basically he told him a bad word and told him, you bleep Mexicans, and when he told me that, I told my husband Ryan, who's sitting right there in the front row, I'm like, oh my God. The first thing I did is we have to call them and complain. This is not acceptable. And we did, but when I told my dad about it, instead of him being happy, he told me, no, you can't do that because you never know who these people have connections to. If they have connections to law enforcement, they wrote down my dad's license plate number. How easy is it to find someone's license plate number, then find out where they live? And it's just little things like that where you're not treated like a normal person. And it breaks my heart that I call this country a home, but legally it's not. And it comes down to a lot of people say, well, you're an illegal alien. That's a term that people like to use that I hate. And I say, okay, well, I came when I was 3 years old, and I'm not even putting the blame on my parents because I think it's any parent's responsibility to do anything that they can so their children can have a better life, especially when death is at your door. Laws don't matter. I still remember, to this day, one of the worst days of my life was the day that Donald Trump got elected as president. I remember the day before that, I told my husband Ryan, I was like, oh, I can't wait until tomorrow. I just want to get this all over with. I'm so tired of this campaign and everything. And then we're sitting there watching, and I'm expecting a good result to kind of just have that sigh of relief of, okay, we're not going to have this person who hates me and hates my family and says that we're rapists and that we're criminals and that we're doing everything bad in the country. That, we're not going to have to worry about him anymore. And we're sitting there, and when Florida turned red, I just knew. There was just this gut feeling in in my heart that said, you know what, he's gonna win. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to keep myself composed, and Ryan's sitting there next to me, and I just start crying because this person being elected, there was so much on the line, everything. You know, I've worked hard to get these scholarships to be in college. You know, I want to be a victims advocate. That's how I met Luann in her victimology class. And it's just, I felt like all of that hard work was on the line because of one person. One person who just thinks that if you're of a certain color, if you come from a certain country, you don't belong here. You know, go back to where you came from. And I remember just crying and just feeling like my nightmares of one day immigration officers coming to my house and handcuffing me and treating me like the criminal that I'm not. I've never committed a crime in my whole life. And getting sent to a country that I do not remember was now actually a possibility. Not even just for me, but for my parents. As I'm thinking about this, I'm like, wow, life without DACA, you know, what's it gonna be like to drive without a license, to not have my bank account anymore, to not be able to do this and this, and the list goes on. And then I think back for a second, I'm like, wait, this is how my parents have been living for 17 years. It amazes me because I mean, they work so hard. They are the most hardworking people I know, working, like I said, the jobs that nobody wants. They have not taken a vacation in 17 years. They give anything so my brother and I can have a better life. And then you look on the news and just, you know, you guys already see what's on the news. But, yeah, okay. I don't know how to finish that, but yes, I am a DACA recipient and I want to continue my college education, but now with the recension of DACA, things get a little complicated, so.
Hello, my name is Helen Martinez, and my stories might be a little bit different because I was actually born in Texas, so I am a U.S. citizen. But my mother, she was an illegal immigrant for a time until she was able to qualify for, I think it was the 1986 asylum. And so she was able to get papers that way, and so now she's a U.S. citizen right now. She came here as a single mom. She had left 3 of her children in El Salvador, and when I was born in Texas, in El Paso, Texas. She came here and she put herself to work because she still had to support 3 of her children back in El Salvador. At that time, I think it was when they started with that civil war. And so her main purpose was to, you know, come here, get some money, and then bring my siblings here to the U.S., sorry. So she's been here, kind of tell my age, sorry, it's been like 41, 42 years now. And so, but since she came here, she's been working, she's worked cleaning houses. And in Texas, at that time, it was $25 a day. And cleaning houses, huge houses. And each day it was a different house. And it was only $25 a day. And she would send her money to provide and support for her family over there in El Salvador. We lived in Texas for a while. From there, my uncle, he said, let's go to Florida. You could work at hotels at Florida. Okay, so we moved to Florida. She first started out picking tomatoes. She picked out tomatoes, she picked oranges, um, and other stuff over there in Florida, but those two are the main things. But they would leave at 4 or 5 in the morning, get on a truck, and in the hot weather, she would wear those long sleeve shirts, something to cover her head. She says over there you couldn't even go to the bathroom because there was no porta potties. There you couldn't wash your hands. And so it was working and hard labor from 5, 6 in the morning until the evening that she would get home 7 o'clock at night from working at the fields. And all that smell from the pesticides and whatever that they had, that they use in the farming fields. She went through all that. Then she was able to get a job at a hotel. And she used to work there, and she worked there for a time. And for some reason, we didn't like Florida, so we came here to Iowa. She worked at I think it's the Hunts over there in Muscatine factory, tomato factory. She also did the picking watermelons here in Iowa, the cantaloupes. She did that for a while. And so we moved it from Muscatine, then here to Des Moines, Iowa. And in Des Moines, Iowa, that's where she started working at Marriott Hotel, okay? And I remember the first time we came here, there was no Latinos at that time. There was like very, very few. And when we saw one, it was like, oh, did you see him? Because there were so few at that time. And it was like, oh, we had to meet them because, there's very few of us at that time. And I remember that when I came here, we went out for a walk in downtown. And I remember that a police stopped. And he was asking, oh, how are you guys? And, because probably he saw Hispanics, and so he stopped. But not because of a mean reason, but it was because, oh, well, do you have food? And do you have this? Do you have that? And so he was a very nice police officer at that time. And so we have good memories of that police officer because he did help us out, like to get, if we needed a place for food or where to get the bus, because we didn't even know that there was a bus system at that time. My mom, going back, she did bring my brother and my sister, and so they've been here. My sister is a U.S. citizen now, and my brother is a resident right now, and so they're okay right now. So our family is from this part of my family, they're okay. And so now going back to where I was, sorry. So she's been working here, and she's been a single mom all this time, raising us, and then still providing for my brother and her family, her mother, her siblings over there in El Salvador. Because from a certain time, there was still a civil war, but she still provided for that family. So when she came to work here, she did not only think about the family here, but she also provided and sent money over there to El Salvador. And till this day, she still does that, because we still have family over there. So my mom, she's the one that's been here working hard. She's the one that always is trying to find ways, okay, how can we improve this? How can we get better to provide? And so then that's when we did the pupusas. And since then, we've been doing that. And so now she's retired, but she is always working. I think that's what keeps her young. But so that's my experience with that, with my mom. On my dad's side, I do have siblings. Those siblings are from my father's side, and they're from Mexico. And so those family members that I have in North Carolina are illegal. They do not have papers. My nephew, one of my nephews, he is a DACA recipient. If my niece she in maybe 1 or 2 years could possibly ask for my brother and his wife to get their papers, but they've been waiting like 12, 15 years just to even get that. So they're still waiting to see for her to become of age to do that. So they're illegal here. They don't have papers. Over there in North Carolina, it's much more difficult. They do, when they have to go to work, they go on bikes because if you're in a car, they're more at risk of being stopped by the police, because there are certain areas that they have stops and they ask for each person's ID or papers. And if they don't have that, then they automatically take them from there. And so they kind of go on bikes just to get to work. And they're always just scared. They don't even want to go out to visit family because they're just afraid of, what if they get caught. And so there's like mostly work and then back home, work and back home. And so that's the experience that that part of my family is going through. And for them, they have my niece, my nephew, they have grandkids now here. And so going back to Mexico, it's going to be hard for them if they had to do that. Hopefully in 2-3 years, my niece is able to apply for them. But, from what happened yesterday, that of the chain family, which is where you could request a family member, hopefully they still could get to that before they do some changes on that. So that's how our family is affected. I have friends that can be affected because they are DACA recipients, some of them. Some have the temporary protective status, which Henry is going to be talking about. And I work in the community. I'm a visiting nurse. I work at Visiting Nurse Services. I was able to get a degree, in nursing, a bachelor's degree, and then I have my little business at the market. And so, that's my mom, putting all that effort, like go to school. And now I have my daughter. She's the second generation or third generation, something like that, here in the U.S., and she's in high school right now. And that's, of course, like every family and every parent, our dream is for her to continue school and further her education and be better than what I did, And so I think that's what we all as family would want for our children, And so that's my story.
Hola.
Hello.
Primeramente les doy gracias por abrir las puertas de la iglesia.
First of all, I would like to give you thanks for opening the doors of the church.
Mi nombre es Henry Artero.
My name is Henry Artero.
No hablo muy bien el inglés.
I don't speak very well English.
Mi historia es un poco parecida a de ellos.
My story is similar to theirs,
Solo que yo ya vine grande a este país.
but the thing is that I came as I was older to this country.
Yo vine a los 21 años.
Excuse me. I came here at 21 years of age.
Yo soy del Salvador.
I'm from El Salvador.
Tuve que emigrar a este país.
I immigrated to this country.
Me sentí forzado
I felt supported, or
me sentí forzado de alguna manera
I don't know, forced, sorry. I felt forced
porque mi padre murió él murió cuando yo tenía 20 años.
My father died when I was 20 years old.
Yo estaba estudiando.
I was studying.
Mi Mi familia somos 4 hermanos.
We are 4 in our family.
Mi papá y mi mamá, ellos trabajaban duro para darnos el estudio.
My parents worked hard to provide for our education,
Pero cuando mi papá murió,
but when my father died,
ya no pudo mi mamá darnos el estudio.
my mother couldn't provide for our education.
Ella tenía que trabajar para darnos de comer y el estudio a los 4.
She had to work so she could provide to feed us and to provide our education.
Yo comencé a ver en eso que era muy difícil para mi mamá.
I saw that it was very difficult for my mother.
Entonces yo pensé en la mejor solución era emigrar para este país.
And so what I thought it was the best solution was to come here, to migrate here to the U.S.
Es duro
It's hard
llegar a este país,
to come to this country,
pero me sentí la necesidad.
but I felt a necessity.
Cuando llegué a este país, lo primero que hice es comenzar a trabajar.
The first thing I did when I came to this country was work.
Le doy gracias a Dios porque llegué a este estado de Iowa.
I thank God because I came to to the state of Iowa,
Y a esta ciudad de Des Moines, y aquí pude trabajar
and I came to this city of Des Moines where I was able to work.
y pude ayudarle a mis hermanos
And I was able to help my brothers
a que ellos pudieran seguir estudiando
so that they could continue with their
y
education,
mi mamá pudiera tener lo básico para vivir, vivir en la casa y comer comida.
and so to help my mom to help meet the needs, the basic needs, food and the other basic needs.
Yo estoy en el programa, soy de El Salvador, estoy en el programa del TPS.
I'm from El Salvador, and I have this. Have this program that is called a TPS.
En el 2001 salió esa ley y pude yo aplicar para un permiso de trabajo.
In 2001, I was given this permit to work in this country,
Y de esa manera yo pude agarrar un trabajo más estable.
and that's how I was able to get a stable work.
Ahorita estoy casado, yo me casé a los 24 años, me casé.
Right now, I am married, and I got married at 24 years of age.
Tengo 3 hijos,
I have 3 children,
uno de 18
one of 18,
y uno de 12 años,
one of 12,
perdón, 13.
13. She just
Y
turned
un hijo de
13.
6.
And a 6-year-old child.
Yo llegué a este país con la ilusión de ayudarle a mi familia
I came to this country in the illusion of helping my family.
y sigo ayudándoles hasta esta fecha.
And till this day, I still help them.
Con mi trabajo que tengo,
With the work that I have,
puedo yo sostener mi familia, mi hogar aquí y poder ayudarle a mi mamá y mis hermanos.
I could sustain myself here, my family here, and to my family in El Salvador.
Desde que yo llegué a este país,
Since I came to this country,
he trabajado duro
I have been working hard.
y nunca he tenido un problema con las leyes.
I've never had problems with the law.
Siempre trato la manera de conducirme lo mejor que pueda.
I always try to conduct myself in the best manner.
He tratado de educar a mis hijos
I
de la
tried
misma manera.
I try to educate my children the same way.
Entonces, ahorita nos encontramos en una situación difícil
And now we find ourselves in a difficult situation
porque para el siguiente año, en el 2019, en septiembre,
for next year, September 2019.
Se va a terminar el plazo que nos han dado del permiso que tenemos de protección temporal.
The permit that he has is going to end in September 2019, which is a TPS, which stands for Temporary Protective Status.
Y es duro para mí, para mis hijos, para mis 3 hijos,
And it's difficult for my 3 children
cuando ellos ven la situación que nos encontramos,
when we're finding ourselves in this situation,
porque ellos 3 han nacido aquí.
because all 3 of them have been born here.
Ellos no conocen lo que es El Salvador.
They don't know what is, El Salvador.
Y ellos quisieran ir a visitarlo, pero no a vivir allá.
They would like to visit, but not to stay over there.
Porque ellos saben, y yo también les explico que la mejor vida para ellos está aquí, para poder estudiar y superarse.
Because I tell them, you know, the best place to live and is here because this is where you could best live and plus you have a better education.
Porque en El Salvador no hay, yo me vine, joven, entonces a regresar no hay trabajo, la situación es tan difícil en nuestro país.
When I came to this country, I was young, but now going back, you know, work is going to be harder to find for my age.
Entonces, ahorita mis hijos me preguntan siempre, papá, ¿qué va a hacer mi hijo mayor? Se llama es Henry Jr. Él siempre me pregunta, papá, ¿qué va a hacer de nosotros en El Salvador?
My son, Henry Jr., the oldest, he asked, you know, what's going to happen to us if we go to El Salvador?
Él quiere estudiar, él quiere superarse. Ya este año él se gradúa de high school.
This year, he's going to graduate from high school.
Él piensa comenzar ya el colegio el próximo año.
And he plans to continue his studies this year.
Y quiere ir a la Iowa State University.
And he's going to be going to Iowa State University.
Pero cuando esta situación nos encontramos, me dice, papá, ¿quién me va a ayudar a mí? ¿Quién me va a poder ayudar para yo seguir mis estudios?
And so when this situation happened, he's like, well, Dad, what's going to happen to me? You know, who's going to be there for me? Who's going to be helping me out?
Entonces, ya es duro para mi esposa y yo cuando nos sentamos a platicar de esta situación que no podemos entender qué pasaría.
And when me and my wife, we sit there and talk, you know, we don't know what could happen or what to do.
Yo tengo 22 años en este país,
I have 22 years being in this country.
entonces ya sentimos como nuestro país es aquí.
And I feel that like this is my country.
Ya estamos acostumbrados a lo que es el vivir en este país.
And we are already accustomed to living into this country.
Yo estudiaba en El Salvador,
I studied in El Salvador.
comencé mi colegio, pero el primer año ya no, cuando mi papá murió yo no pude seguir.
I did a first year in college, but after my father died, I couldn't continue anymore.
Yo no quiero que esto mismo pase con mis hijos,
And I don't want this to happen to my children either.
porque yo lo que quiero es que ellos se superen como yo pensaba hacerlo.
Because I want them to succeed like that's what I first had thought for them.
Porque yo lo que les he enseñado lo que les enseño a ellos es eso, la superación es importante para que sean unas personas de bien en este país.
Because what I've taught them is to succeed so they could be a better person in this country.
Yo no quiero que ellos anden con necesidades como tal vez las tuve yo.
I don't want them to go through what I went through.
Por eso es que necesitamos la ayuda de una forma de la comunidad.
Oh, and that's why we need that help from the community.
Porque si estamos aquí es porque venimos a trabajar y venimos a querer sacar adelante a nuestra familia.
Because if we are here, it's because we want to succeed. We want our children to succeed.
Como los jóvenes de DACA,
Like those youths from the DACA,
yo en mi familia tengo también primos que están en ese programa
I have cousins that also are in that program.
y es una lástima que les quieren sus sueños a cuando ellos ya están por graduarse o queriendo sacar una carrera para poder ser de bien en este país.
And it's sad that, you know, that their dreams is going to be broken because they can't graduate or they can't continue with their careers because of this program.
Así que yo a mi hijo lo que le digo es, la confianza de nosotros siempre la tenemos en Dios.
First of all, what I tell my son is, first of all, our faith is in God.
Yo nací en una familia cristiana
I was born in a Christian family,
y he crecido con la fe en Dios
and I grew up with that faith in God.
y por eso es que siempre hemos creído que está Dios primero sobre todo,
And I know that, first of all, is God first,
pero necesitamos la ayuda de la comunidad.
we also need the help from the community. Okay,
Gracias.
thank you.
First of all, thanks to all of you for joining us this evening. It was wonderful to hear your stories, so thank you for coming. So I have my senators and congressmen on speed dial, much to their dismay. Knowing the proposal that's on the table, which is to, I believe, grant legal status to, or provide a path to citizenship for the DACA recipients in exchange for gazillions of wasted dollars to build a wall and additional border security. Even as much as I hate the wall and everything it stands for, it feels to me like it's a compromise that we should be able, that's worth it to me. Build your damn wall, I don't care. I want you guys to get legal status. What do you guys think? I mean, obviously you want legal status too, right?
Yeah.
Take your damn wall. What do you think? Should I call him tomorrow and say, let's do this?
Is my mic on? Okay. I've actually had this conversation with my dad because I like to visit him and spend time with him because if I'm like a day apart from him, I miss him too much. So I asked him, Dad, they're mentioning building this wall and in exchange, dreamers can have a pathway. And we're both okay with it. I mean, the wall's not going to do anything. If Trump wants his wall and all these people want their wall, you can have your wall. But I mean, for dreamers, a wall, no matter how tall, isn't going to stop us from reaching our dreams. So if they want their wall, they can get their wall.
As part of the DACA program, is there a way for the parents of the DACA recipients to get their citizenship too?
No, there was this other program that the Obama administration tried to pass, but a federal judge, I believe in Texas, stopped it. It was DAPA, which would be not for DACA parents, but for the parents of citizens. So like if someone who isn't documented had a U.S. citizen, then they would qualify, but like my parents wouldn't be able to qualify. But the judge stopped it and went to the Supreme Court in 2016, and that's when we were missing a justice, so then it ended up in a tie, and so it never was effective. And it wasn't really a pathway. It was basically kind of like with DACA, where we get a 2-year work permit and basically shielded from deportation, and you can renew that every 2 years, which obviously under Trump administration won't be possible anymore, starting next month, I believe, 2 months, March. So.
I'm going to ask one more follow-up question. So an illegal immigrant has a child here and is a U.S. citizen. Mm-hmm. Can that child then, is that what you're talking about with your cousin? When that child reaches age of majority, can they then sponsor their parent?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, because a lot of people I've seen ask, okay, well, all these whiny dreamers, why are they complaining they had such a long time to apply for legal status? There's really only a couple of ways that you can get a legal status in the country. One is if your child sponsors you, which is what my brother wants to do with my parents. But they put a lot of buts. That's what immigration does. You have to show that you make enough money to the point where they don't have to, they can't apply for any like welfare and all that. Like you have enough to basically finance them being in the country. And you have to be, I think it's 21 in order to sponsor them. So that's kind of another thing. And it does take about 2 or 3 years for that process. But yes, that is a possibility. And another possibility is actually what I'm doing, and it is through marriage. If you marry a US citizen, then that pathway opens too. So Ryan and I had been together for like 2 years, and so when all this DACA thing was falling on our shoulders, we talked about this for a couple months, probably since Trump got elected, and we knew this was a possibility of happening, and so we said, you know what, we want to get married in the future, you know, we know we're meant to be, and we wish we could wait, but do we really have the chance to wait? Do we want to sacrifice us not being able to be together because, you know, I end up deported? And so we decided to take that step, and we got married in August. And so we've started our process, but it's backed up by like a year because so many people are applying because of all this pressure of, okay, it's now or maybe you might not get the chance to apply later. So those are really the only two pathways that you can do. And even then, it's very hard to do that. Like, we had to provide immigration proof of everything. Proof that I know his like deepest, darkest secret, how long have we been together, where have we gone, where are your tickets from when you went to that concert 2 years ago, where it's this. They want so much information. And that's just to apply, apart from it being very expensive. Like that's the reason why I had to take a semester off college, because I had all these funds saved up for my college education once I went to Iowa State, and then this happened, and so all of my savings went to the government. I had to give them $5,000. And so I had to take that semester off so I can work full-time, which is what I'm doing now. I'm working at Starbucks in Urbandale in case anyone wants to visit me. And I'm there full-time so I can save up that money so I can go to Iowa State in August to continue my education, because I'm not going to let anything stop me. So, yeah, with DACA you get a social security number. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can get a driver's license, you can get a bank account, you can get all that good stuff, but you can't get any aid from the government, like nothing. People have this myth that undocumented immigrants are on welfare and they're sitting at home, and no, we didn't qualify for any of that stuff. So, yeah.
So you have a question?
Okay, so thank you again, all of you, for your stories. What I'd like to know is, looking out in the audience here, other than voting, which we all will be doing, what is it that we can do to help support you and your families now?
Lo que más necesitamos nosotros como inmigrantes
What we mostly need as immigrants
es, sí, principalmente ver el apoyo,
is first the support,
porque lo que lo sentimos es como discriminados.
because what we feel discriminated.
Lo que necesitamos es que los entiendan que también somos trabajadores
And to understand that we also are workers.
y que nos ayuden a hablar con los senadores, con las personas importantes en este estado,
To help and call, your senators, your representatives of the state.
que necesitamos la ayuda para ver de que tener nuestros documentos en regla.
So we could get that help, to have our papers in order.
Para seguir con nuestros documentos y que no los quiten.
And that, to continue with our legal status and to continue.
Porque en el caso de mi esposa y yo,
Like in the case of me and my wife,
tenemos el TPS
we have the TPS, the Temporary Protective Status.
y en el siguiente año, septiembre, se acabaría y lo deportarían.
And in September of 2019, that's going to end. And from there, we're at risk of getting deported.
¿Qué pasaría con mis hijos?
What would happen to my children?
So, lo que necesitamos es que una una voz fuerte para que entiendan que necesitamos estar en este país.
And we need a strong voice to let them know that, so we can continue being in this country.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Could I also add something? Yeah, he mentioned a really good point, and that's calling your representatives, because if I call them every day and if I email them every day, they don't care. Because they're like, you know what, you can't vote, so I don't matter to them. What matters to them is all of you who can vote. You have no idea how much I wish I could vote. Like, there's so many times when, even for local elections, I pressure him to go vote. I'm like, yeah, local elections today, you need to go and vote. And that's such a huge privilege to be able to do that. Because, yeah, you guys are essentially their boss. You guys are in charge. If they don't feel the pressure, they're not going to do anything. Especially with Iowa being such a mixed state of Democrats and Republicans, we just need you to be our voice. I mean, a lot of us even, you have no idea how much courage I had to come here today. I've never talked about this before to people. There's a lot of my friends that still don't know. And when all this started happening, I tried to contact my representatives, and they're like, oh, well, shoo, fly, you don't matter. And so then we started to try to get Des Moines to be a welcoming city, so that way police officers can't pull over people and ask you for documentation. And then Des Moines City Council said, no, go away, we're not going to listen to you. And then they came up with this new policy that says you can't talk to them about immigration issues. So, yeah, so then once I saw all those things not having any effect, what I did is, okay, then I'm going to try to tell the people around me that dreamers are in your schools, dreamers are in your church, dreamers are your neighbors. I started telling my instructors, like, hey, I'm a DACA recipient. I think that's one of the first things I told Luann. When our first assignment, I told her, I'm a DACA recipient. Because I think that's important to see that we're not just some people that you hear about on the news. We're people that are all around you. So that's also important that you tell people, okay, these are not just strangers. They might be right next door to you, and you may not even know it. So that's, to sum it up, yeah, those two things, calling your representatives and telling other people about it too, because I don't think that everyone's evil and just wants to deport everyone. I think there's just some people that aren't informed.
Yes.
So we wanted to thank you, and we were very honored to hear your stories this evening, and thank you very much for sharing those. And I want you to know, beyond voting and beyond contacting and bugging our representatives and senators, that one of the things this church community is doing is praying for this community and for your challenges, and know that the majority of people who voted in that election did not vote for those policies. And so we hope that this community and others, many in this community, are fully supportive of you and would do anything we can to help support you. So thank you very much this evening for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.